Reclassification of Caribbean islands from high and middle income countries so as to attract concessional financing to address issues of climate change does not appear to be a priority for multilateral groups such as the IMF. Caribbean countries have long complained that the metrics used to classify them as high and middle income countries is not a correct measurement of what is happening on the ground in these islands. But when the question was posed to the director of the IMF Western Hemisphere Department, Rodrigo Valdez, in a recent press conference, he conceded that the classifications are based on rules already set. He was asked the question by SK and Vibe's Jermaine Abel.
There has been a concern, and just recently during this week, the Minister of Finance, specifically within St. Vincent, raised this concern. Reclassification, is there any consideration by the IMF to reclassify them as not necessarily being high income earning countries, specifically when they're going to be affected by hurricane?
There are no plans to change our definitions of which country is either, which is not one, who has concessional lending, etc. Those are rules that are given. But we understand that there is an interesting discussion about other measures of vulnerability. Now, there is no consensus on that, so really is discussion ongoing. And very importantly, we're pretty flexible when we design programs. When we design programs, we take into account vulnerability. And part of our advice to the region, to the Caribbean region, is given the effect of natural disasters that happen there in terms of how often and how big, it's very important to have physical space to tackle that in preparation. So this measure of this recommendation of fiscal restraint in the short run to build up space, to build up buffers, applies squarely also to the Caribbean.
In an interview with the SK Newsline at the IMF World Bank spring meetings recently, Finance Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Camilo Gonzalez, lamented that organizations like the World Bank and the IMF were not accurately measuring the wealth of Caribbean countries, which placed them at a disadvantage.
If you look at the per capita GDP, per capita GNI, you would think that everybody in St. Kitts is wealthy. But that's not the case. It's that you have an amount of money divided by a very small number of persons, so it's a misleading number that is created. Similarly in St. Vincent and the Grenadines with 110,000 people. Income per capita is not a measure in the Caribbean context, in a small state context, of wealth.
Meanwhile, Valdez had a good assessment of Caribbean economies regarding economic growth.
Well, the Caribbean region has done, as the rest, pretty well in the last few years. If you would have put the shocks that were coming 5 years ago in the future, I would have been very worried. And reality is that the economy is recovered. The Caribbean region went back to activity levels pre-COVID. Some countries are growing faster than others. Particularly to notice Guyana, very strong growth. But there are others too, no? The group of countries that are more tourism dependent rebounded very quickly and are normalizing. And the following message is valid for all countries in the region. We're going back to normal growth. If we want more growth, what is needed is to work through the underpinnings of long-term growth with reforms of different types. And that's critical as a message for the Caribbean too.
The IMF has reported that St. Kitts and Nevis' economy grew by 3% over the past year, and the strong growth is expected for 2024. I'm Andre Huey for SKN Newsline.